What's up guys, Frantic here, and welcome to the Sunday Show, where I give you stuff I've been listening to this week in hopes that you'll find something else to listen to. Let's jump right into it. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is one of the biggest releases of this week in the metal scene, something probably a lot of you have heard about, and that was the new Metallica album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct. Now, personally, I enjoy Metallica. I was raised on Metallica, essentially. That's what got me into metal. That's what got me to play guitar. They're kind of like not everybody, but most people's introduction into metal. And so for them to release an album, 35 years after they were formed is a statement in and of itself. They've been around forever. But I'm not going to talk too in-depth about this album because I probably am going to save it for an album review because of how big this is and how interesting it is in general. But I've been listening to it nonetheless ever since it came out because, I was a big Metallica fan. And if you want my opinion on Metallica, it's essentially the first 4 albums are amazing, Black Album's pretty good, and then after that it's really weird. So I'm not going to go any further beyond that, but Hardwired to Self-Destruct is a really interesting album, and if I had to say anything about it, I'd have to say that James Hetfield's singing, he's almost 60 years old. I gotta cut him some slack, but it seems like he's constantly on the same note for 90% of the songs. So that's a little bit but everything else is pretty great. The guitars sound great, the bass is good, the drums, even though it's Lars Ulrich, is pretty good. So I have to say that I enjoy this album so far, but I will leave any more in-depth stuff to talk about it in another review. But if I had to recommend 2 songs, I would recommend Murder 1, and I would recommend Dream No More. Dream No More is pretty good. It's like this sad but true modern version of it, and this whole album is essentially Metallica over the years, is the best way to put it. So I'd recommend it if you like Metallica, because I personally think it's one of the best albums they've released in a while. Okay, so up next, I'm going to recommend something that's from one of my other favorite bands, Pain of Salvation. They've been around for a little while now, and they're kind of like prog rock and a little bit of prog metal here and there. Think of Dream Theater, but with a little bit of a different spin on it. So Pain of Salvation just released a new song off their new album called Meaningless, and Meaningless is really, really interesting. It's about 4 minutes long. They released a video. I would absolutely recommend watching this video. And this song is really catchy, but it's really haunting, and it talks essentially about death and, someone being so worried that someone's away from death. And the video is kind of weird because the Daniel Gildenlow, if that's how I say his name, I truly don't know, he is playing a dead body, and there's a funeral, and then there's like the autopsy kind of like being interlaced together. And during the autopsy, the lady that's, like examining him essentially starts having sex with his body, which is really weird. But anyways, it's a good song nonetheless. I had it stuck in my head all Friday when it came out, and it was just really, really good. I would highly recommend it. It's haunting, it's catchy, and it's just really good. Alright guys, last I'm going to recommend one band, but I'm going to recommend an album they released and a single they released. So this band is slowly growing up in my ranks, basically, of bands I really, really enjoy. And they come from the progressive metalcore genre, which I've been kind of recommending the past couple of weeks because it's just so unique and awesome. So this band is called Pangaea, and they have 2 things, like I said, I want you to listen to. The first one being their album Roots from 2015. Roots is an amazing album, front to back. I love it. I think the last song on the album kind of dodges off. I might have recommended these guys before now that I say this, but I will just go back and recommend them again. But then I would also recommend their single called Unified. And Unified just has 4 songs. I think it came out before Roots, if Spotify is telling me correctly, of course. So off of this album, Thanatophobia, that is the first track of the album, speaks for the whole, or not album, sorry, single, speaks for the whole single. I would absolutely recommend that song. And then off of Roots, I would absolutely recommend Old Soul and Gaia Reconciliation. But honestly, listen to all these front to back. Don't stop for anything. It's so good. I highly recommend it. And boom, guys, that about does it for me. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. What'd you think of the stuff I recommended last week? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Please let me know. And anyways, if you want to see some other stuff, you can check out stuff on the right side of the screen where you can see, the latest episode of the podcast or the last episode of this. So remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.